Hello there guys, it's Captain Invisible here and welcome to another online battle for Medieval 2 Total War. So this is a 3 versus 3 on the Death Track map, and it's quite a good map, Death Track, really nice map with some interesting terrain, some nice terrain features over here with these villages, and a nice track running through the centre, with a couple of hills and forests in the distance. So really nice, really well balanced, but also very fun as well. So definitely one of my favourite maps actually to play on. So as I say, this is a 3 versus 3. I'm in command of the Poles. My ally is Dalwhinnie in command of Spain. And then we've got Russia, commanded by Zakiasas. Just gonna call him Zach for now, because my pronunciation of names is terrible, especially ones that are supposed to have a foreign accent to them, and my very blunt Yorkshire accent just cannot pick them up at all. Our opponents for this battle were Subutai in command of the Moors. We've got Alex of Wallachia in command of France, and I've got a tickle in my throat there, so excuse me. And some beautiful French knights here. Sorry. Get a good look at them. And we've got England being commanded by Kevin C. So some very very sort of underused factions in this battle. Poland, I mean Russia's used quite a lot, but it's still a weaker faction. But certainly Poland, I mean England's used quite a lot as well, but again it's a weaker faction. Poland's probably the most unused faction in this battle, but I see some more Moorish players, or people playing as the Moors, and I see some Russians and English, but I'd say the Poles are definitely quite underused. The most used are probably Spain and France in this, out of the six factions here, so they're quite strong factions to use anyway. So we'll speed it up, and I shall just explain what I wanted to discuss. Basically, I want to talk tactics. I want to talk about some form of tactics, and especially aggressive tactics. A lot of people, when they hear aggressive tactics, they immediately go to rush. Rush tactics. You forgo all missiles, forgo all strategy, just pick your army up and throw it at the enemy, because that's what a rush is. And really, rushing doesn't work that well. It works in some situations, but you really have to find a situation where it's going to work. If you are literally going to pick your army up and throw it at your enemy, you are really going to suffer, and it's going to be very bad for you, because you are basically throwing your army into a situation that your enemy has wanted you to be in. So, when people think of aggression, they immediately think of rush, and that's not necessarily the case. There are forms of aggression that don't even require to touch the enemy, let alone actually getting to let alone using just massed infantry to throw at your enemy. So, aggression, as I say, it can come in multiple forms. Rushing is certainly a viable aggressive tactic, but it's a very dangerous one to be in. You really don't want to be in a situation where you are rushing at your enemy in such a way that you're going to put your own units at risk. There are forms of aggression that don't require rushing, just simply pushing your enemy. You're forcing your enemy into a situation that they are uncomfortable with is a form of aggression. Horse archers are great for doing that. because they force your enemy to do what you want them to do, which is to think irrationally and pick their own army up and throw it at you, even if they don't, even if it's not built for that. And the other forms of aggression, which Russia should have probably used in this battle, but I think the Zach, being a new player, wouldn't have known this tactic, is the delaying tactic, or the threatening tactic. Russia, he didn't need to rush here, because me and Spain were going to do that, as I'll explain later on. All Russia needs to do is fix Subutai in place, to make him stay where he is and not support France. So the best way to do that is literally just to get into a position, say here, where if the Moors were to send any troops around this way, Russia would be able to intercept them and put Subutai in a bad position. But he doesn't need to engage by doing that. He just literally needs to sit here, use his skirmishers to draw the enemy fire, use his cavalry at a distance, sort of over here or sort of down here. In fact, it'd probably be best down here, because then you can shoot the gap, as it were, and just basically be there. The fact that he would be there instead of actually being in combat would be enough to stop Subutai from sending support. Or that would be the idea anyway, of the delay sort of fixing strategy. But in this situation, rushing is actually a viable strategy. England is currently way off on his own, isolated in the woods, so the sound strategy here was for me and Spain, Dalwhinnie, to rush France and break through France quickly, and then we will be able to either wrap up Subutai, who should be fixed by Russia, or to make a new line to block England. So rushing in this scenario is a sound strategy. It's just rushing in general, I don't see the point of. I mean, even in this army, even as the Poles, I brought missiles, because missiles are essential for making your opponent do something. If you do not have missiles and your enemy does, you are forced to rush. You are forced to rush in that situation, and you lose control of yourself because you are being forced to do something. So in typical rush fashion, I brought a ton of infantry, the dismounted Polish knights, the only decent infantry that Poland has, and I'm going to use my my woodsman screen to push up. It's going to drive the French missiles back, which is what you want them to do, because whilst they are moving, they are not shooting, so you can then push right up into combat. And my hussars tried to do a strike on the Scots Guard, but unfortunately they are pretty hardy missile troops, and they were taking a lot of fire on the way in, so my hussars are unfortunately in a terrible position. And then I make probably one of my first mistakes in this battle, or one of many mistakes. I leave my woodsmen stationary here, and I rush up my infantry to pass them to try and get into combat. And what that's going to do is basically my meat screen is going to end up behind my army, and my infantry is going to end up being exposed. And France, with all this cavalry, is going to be able to take advantage of that and really put down some pressure. Right here, there's a French knight unit coming in, and it absolutely obliterates this dismounted Polish knight unit. And again, another withering charge comes in and demolishes this unit as well. And that's 2 units of my dismounted Polish knights gone. in a matter of seconds. In fact, half a second. Fortunately, the rest of his units did get clean charges off, so I was fortunate there. But that is why you need your meat screens up in front instead of behind your approaching infantry. It was a terrible situation for me and a huge error on my part. So I've finally sort of tied down a lot of the French troops and even some English ones. England did actually move up quicker than I anticipated, and he is now sort of moving into a flanking position. So Spain has to get his ass up as soon as possible. It was a bit of a mistimed attack on our part, but Spain is now coming into combat. The French knights are still really healthy, and they're going to pull out to do some flank, to try and get some flanking positions and just be a nuisance. But as I say, I've managed to tie down a lot of the French troops, and I've still got some cavalry intact, although admittedly my cavalry moves in this battle were just as poor as my infantry formations. Still, we've got some Polish Guard here tying down some of these infantry units. And Spain's coming in to support my own infantry, which desperately needs the support because I suffered quite a lot of casualties on the way in, so I'm going to really suffer in this battle against France if I don't have the support from Spain. Fortunately, we did plan for this attack, so we knew that England would be quite far behind, and we would need to really push up with these Spanish conquistadors and things to really hammer the French down. Unfortunately, the Spanish cav is also in the back. This was quite a good move from Darwin, getting his cavalry round to hammer these skirmishers and to tie down the French cavalry so that they are not interfering with the infantry fight. Whilst all this is going on, the Russians unfortunately rushed forward a bit too quickly and got themselves caught out by Subutai. Subutai is a good player as it is, and the Russian player was a newer player. But all he had to do was fix the Moors in place to stop them from assisting, and unfortunately he's decided to rush in and try and take the Moors on, which is not an easy thing for Russia to do anyway because their infantry is subpar at best. But yeah, certainly against Subutai, he would have had control of the battle, and the Russians are now in awkward situations all over the battlefield. But we do have breakthroughs in the centre. Spanish infantry coming in to help deal with these French knights in the back. I do try to get them charges off, but they weren't really that effective. My cavalry tactics in this battle were really poor. In fact, generally all my tactics were poor, but it was a good battle to explain the whole rush scenario. And we are finally pushing back some of these French, and now we've got the English dismounted knights and heavy bowmen coming in to try and break us on this flank. My skirmish cav is still firing, although I don't know what it's targeting at this point. Looks like it's targeting some of these Scots Guard. Probably not the best target because they are in loose formation, but yeah, their armour won't do much against the armour piercing of the mounted crossbows. So I've wheeled my archers up, and the fact that I actually have archers is going to allow me to to put down some covering fire for these Spanish troops. Going to shoot at some of these armoured swordsmen, which they're not going to take too much damage from a unit that has 5 missile damage. Not even armor piercing, but the fact that I do have fire coming in is obviously a good thing to have. So I believe Subutai general is dead at this point. God knows where he's ended up, but he has been defeated. The English cav is now in the rear, which is again exactly where it needs to be and where we really don't want it to be. So we're going to have to use infantry to block it, and I'm going to have to focus fire on it with my mounted crossbows and just see what damage we can do. The French cavalry is still very much alive. There are a couple of units that are still roaming around. Fortunately, I do still have my general's bodyguard in relatively good shape, and we do have some other cavalry units still available. There's a lot of Spanish cav still about, so Spain really using his cavalry effectively to roam the battlefield and get some decent kills. But I believe at this point, the Russians are being defeated, and now the Moors can come in with their full force to try and defeat the rest of our armies. It's a brutal charge in there by the French general's bodyguard. We're going to try to tie him down, but he's going to escape from this situation. We've got some dismounted feudal knights still holding on strong on this flank, even as the rest of the French troops rout from this section. I believe that would be the French infantry routing. There'll be scattered troops all over the place, but I believe that's the majority of the French troops. Over on this flank, we do manage to rout some of the dismounted English infantry, thanks to some great cavalry work again by Dalwhinnie. Definitely using his cavalry effectively. He doesn't want to get them caught by these spearmen though. And then he's going to come into support against the rest of these English troops. There are some longbowmen set up, but again, that's why I've got archers to pepper them down and try and get some kills against them. We've already got some decent kills against them because they are blobbed up. So that's the use of any archer unit, is to put some pressure on the enemy missiles themselves. But over here, I believe my general has died. I believe he was fighting some infantry a bit too eagerly, and got himself killed, which is not good, especially for my troops, as it will demolish the morale. And I'm actually going to lose quite a lot of my troops in this section. Yeah, all my troops over here start to rout, and my weakened units over here are going to get trapped in some bad situations. We've got some more English infantry, the armoured sergeants coming in. They're going to put the pressure on. And my Spanish ally has his troops now surrounded by some English armoured swordsmen up front, and then the bodyguard of Subutai hitting them on the flank. Not a great situation for them to be in. And if my lines break here, then he may end up with some armoured sergeants in the rear. And at this point in the battle, this general's sort of dying all over the place, so the battle's starting to turn a bit sour for us all. Fortunately, these armoured sergeants seem to be caught up on some of my archers, and these Polish archers are actually pretty good in melee. You really don't want to mess with these guys because they have swords and they have shields as well. That's another enemy general, I believe, dead. So lots of enemies dying at this point. We're just gonna start cleaning up some of these scattered cavalry units, because cavalry at end game of a battle is a serious problem. There's still a lot of these Pavis crossbowmen still alive for Spain. He's going to get some point-blank shots into these armoured sergeants, whose morale isn't the best, and they're going to rout, especially to some withering fire from the combined might of the Pavis crossbowmen and my own archers. I've even got my last remaining general's bodyguard cleaning some of them up as well. So it's still looking pretty close. We've got the French general over here doing some stuff, forcing my dismounted Lithuanian cavalry off the field. Definitely a nice use of a single man in a unit, because units will not return if there's a unit chasing them. So if you've got any weak units that you really don't need or you can't be used elsewhere, definitely throwing them after routing units is always a good idea. Oh, in fact, these guys did return, even though they were being chased by the general's bodyguard. That's weird. That usually never happens. Yeah, if there's a unit in close proximity to them, they usually always rout off the field. And I've just got a single brave Polish knight trying to defeat some of these armoured swordsmen and infantry, but the withering fire from the longbowmen is going to indiscriminately kill everyone in this section of the field. A lot of friendly fire going on, but it is going to be enough to kill the last of my knights and rout these archers as well. So I believe that's all of my units routing. I think I admit defeat shortly after that, just to make sure that they're not going to return, because they have been completely defeated at this point. And then we've got this Spanish infantry just roaming around trying to kill as much as it can. And then all of these English longbowmen. Some still in good number and probably have quite a lot of ammo left. But we still have the infamous Pavis crossbowmen ready to do battle with them. So an epic longbowmen versus Pavis crossbowmen battle, and I certainly know who is going to win. If you know anything about Pavis crossbowmen, you certainly know who's going to win. And if you have no idea and are just a fan of the longbowmen, then you probably won't know who's going to win. In fact, these guys have even run out of ammo, so these guys are not going to be any use at all. But the Spanish infantry is going to try and chase these longbowmen down. There's longbowmen and there's the peasant crossbowmen over here. But other than that, the rest of the troops have been defeated. The last thing I'm going to show you before I skip to the end, because it'll just be a shootout between these units, is the general's bodyguard, or the general, should I say, of France, going ham against these Pavis crossbowmen. Pavis crossbowmen are so weak in melee that one hit from this general is going to kill them all. So he's going to carve a bloody swathe through these peasants that think they are warriors, and he's going to show them exactly what a warrior is meant to do. And then he's going to take a face full of crossbow bolts, and he's just going to be on his way. Certainly a braver man if there ever was one. So we're just going to skip to the end. I'm just going to have it on fast forward because this general still goes ham on all of these units. And then there's just going to be a shootout with the Paris crossbowmen and the longbowmen. So yeah, an interesting battle. Certainly not my best, but I wanted to show you guys because it was a very epic, very close battle. Some really interesting things happened. I'm sorry I couldn't show you all the battle, especially that over on the Moorish side, but I really wanted to just show you how a rush can be useful, but also explain how it really shouldn't be used that well. Yeah, as I say, whenever I say aggressive tactics to people, they always think immediately to rush. You know, this faction's a rush faction, this faction's a skirmish faction, this faction is, you know, blah blah blah. In terms of aggression, as I say, there are levels of aggression, and you need to pick which one will be suitable in any given situation, as opposed to just going, oh, I'm just going to be a rush army and not bring any missiles. I always bring missiles for any faction that I pick. My minimum is usually 2, and my maximum for a rush army is probably going to be about 3. But I always bring some missiles because you never know when you will need to use those missiles. You know, the situation is dictated by how well or poorly the battle goes, and if you don't have missiles, you cannot change the pace of the battle in your favour. You are dictated by what your opponent does, and that is not good for an aggressive play style. You need to play where you dictate what your opponent does, you force your opponent to do what you want them to do, and you put them in the situations that is going to benefit your army as opposed to theirs. Now that could be that, you know, you end up with more infantry than your opponent, so you are likely to want to rush, but why pick up your army and throw it at your enemy when you can weaken his most valuable assets, either his cavalry or his missiles, before you engage? So yeah, rush tactics are viable, but you really shouldn't use them just for the sake of using them. They are not a universal aggressive tactic. There are some aggressive tactics that you can use that won't actually require to engage in melee at all, and usually it's best just to actually wait and just see what your opponents are doing before you start to think, I'm going to rush here, I'm going to rush in this situation, I'm going to be aggressive here. Yeah, it's all dictated by the situation and how it pans out. So, these are the battle statistics. Obviously, Spain doing the best with 1,060 kills, using his army really well, especially that cavalry in the rear. That was a really nice use of his cavalry, especially those conquistadors, which are not stronger than the French cav, but can still put up quite a good fight against other units. I got 860 kills, so you know, not too bad. I wish I'd used my army a bit better, but you know, it did its job to pin France in place, and you know, hopefully I did well. Well, I did well enough to obviously allow Spain to, you know, pull the victory. But as I say, I wish I'd done better in this battle. And then Russia, again, he kind of just picked his army up and threw it at the at Subutai, the Moorish player, and it really didn't work out that well for him. If he would have held back a bit and sort of assessed the situation and kind of pinned Subutai in place, then that would have worked out a bit better for him. But I say, he is a new player, so you know, I don't expect new players to know these tactics. But I will be discussing these tactics a bit more in future videos, as say the use of the delaying tactics, the pinning tactics, you know, the those sorts of tactics that involve playing aggressively but not being overly aggressive. Subutai getting 966 kills, so doing really well on his side. You're really dealing with the Russians fairly well, and then moving in to support his allies. France 845 kills, so I think me and France basically killed each other. We got similar kills, exactly the same captures, which is a bit funny. So yeah, we clashed. I had support from Spain who helped me defeat France, but it was a bit too late. My army was already partially destroyed by those early cavalry charges from France, because I didn't defend my infantry very well, and my cavalry was doing very poorly in this battle as well. So yeah, so that's France, and then England only getting 689 kills. So doing better than Russia, but as I say, because he isolated himself, he wasn't as valuable as Russia was. Russia being there, even though he was destroyed, he kept the Moors from supporting his allies. He basically pinned the Moors down, even though it was a little bit more aggressive than what I was expecting from him. He did well to sort of tie the Moors down and just feed them something to kill, and then by the time the Moors had dealt with him, it was too late. You know, the battle was already turning in our favour by then. So yeah, Kevin C just isolated himself too far over into the woodland, and it allowed me and Spain to double team France, try and knock him out early and then turn on Kevin. It took us longer to kill France than I would have liked, but it was, we did it in the end, and England wasn't in the best position when he came up onto this ridge to be able to stop us. So that was the strategy behind me and Spain, and Russia played his part really well there. So, I hope you enjoyed this battle. It was a very close one. I really did enjoy it, and it was very good to sort of discuss some aggressive tactics. I shall talk more about aggression in future videos. I have a couple more videos relating to aggressive tactics and really pushing your opponents to do something that will benefit you. So look out for those, but for now, thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you all in the next video.